Alright guys, so here we are on module 12, and we're kind of going to take a little bit, going to take a different route here. We're going to be talking about render settings, and more particular we're going to be talking about Arnold render settings. So we have this Arnold tab up here, and this is where our render view lies, okay, and this opens up this window here. And right now we have some objects in the scene. I actually have 4 objects in the scene, but we can see 3 of them. Alright, and we just have a triangle, sphere, and this cube. Now, I'm letting this render kind of just go on its own. In other words, I'm just letting the power of my CPU, the brain of my computer, finalize this particular render. And we're going to see how long this particular one takes. Now we have some reflections, we have some transmissions, we definitely have some lights, and not too much of an atmosphere. It's just regular default space for that. But render settings are what help us develop faster. They also help us finalize our animations and renderings. So this took a little bit over a minute, just right at a minute, and it's not too shabby. We have a little bit of noise and some ghosting going on, but for the most part everything was set at default, and we have, a minute in render time. Well, when you're developing and you're making or you're creating a scene, sometimes you want it to go a little quicker. In other words, sometimes you want to see the results a little faster so that you can go in and change things and edit it. So here we are now in our render settings, and this particular pop-up window, we are in the Common tab, alright, and we are in our Arnold renderer. And if we look here at the top, we have our file naming profile, we have our image format, we have the quality, and all of these pretty much are left at default. And there's some other attributes that we can kind of come in and change. One of the ones I like to change is this extension, and I like this name number dot extension. For me, it tends to be the safest, especially when we're doing sequences, and especially when we're doing a JPEG sequence. Alright guys, so as we kind of come down here, I just wanted to show you a little bit here, because we're going to revisit all of these. This is the resolution. Right now it's set at HD 540. We can increase that maybe to HD 720, and maybe, depending on your computer power, you could even go a little bit larger. So I find that the HD 540 is great for developing, and the HD 720 can also be great for developing, but it does actually put out a pretty nice finalized product. And as we kind of scroll back up here, we look at this is our animation frame range, 1 to 10. If we had more frames in it, it would be like 1 to 3000. Up here again is our image information or file output. I'm going to click on this Arnold Render tab, and within this tab here we have some sampling settings that I'm going to leave at default, and we'll talk more about these. The main one at the top there is that Anti-Alias, and that's where power can be, that's where it can put stress on your computer. In other words, it demands quite a bit of power. There are some ways to kind of optimize that power too, and again we'll explore it during these 2 next tutorials. But I wanted to point out this adaptive sampling. This is something a little bit, it's somewhat newer. The adaptive sampling does help with render time. It does allow the computer to kind of only render out samples that is necessary. I hope that makes sense. And there's some other settings down here that we'll explore too as well. But for now I wanted to toggle open this environment setting. Now this is a back-end type of atmosphere, okay? And we have a background legacy, and we have this atmosphere attribute. And we will be using this. I mean, this is something important. It's great for lighting. It's great for effects and other types of attributes. But to initiate it, we're going to click on that checker box and we are going to select AI atmospheric, actually atmosphere here. And it gives us these attributes or settings in our attribute editor that we can kind of look at and change around. Now this atmosphere is pretty powerful. Okay, I really have never gone above a 0.01 for density, and we're going to start off at a 0.001, and we're going to take a look at this. Okay, and we're going to see the stress that it's put on our render time. So I'll go ahead and shoot off a render here, and I'll fast forward it. And what do we have? About 2 minutes, almost 3 minutes of render time now with this particular atmosphere. Okay, and again, this is CPU power, and it is still set at the default anti-alias settings within our render settings. There's more to hardware in these settings than other, other softwares that you've experienced. In other words, if you have a good beefy computer, some of these render settings can be set to use those particular GPUs and CPUs within a more beefier computer, a little bit more modern. If you are running a GeForce RTX or a GeForce TI, for the most part, you're safe with any RTX. I'm running right now a GeForce RTX 2060. And with that, we have some more selections here within our Arnold Render. Now, if we open up our System tab, we can see that our Denoiser, or our render device, is this CPU. Okay. Well, if you're running an RTX, they will give you the option to use your GPU. And then it would allow you to use your render fallback on the CPU. Now, of course, you have to select your GPU, which is my GeForce RTX 2060 here, and I want to make sure that's selected. Okay, and for the rest, I think I'll just leave it as default. Now, you can again adjust some of these settings, and you can get some better times and better results, and we'll explore those more as we get more advanced with our final output. But for what I want is, I want you guys to have a stable standard that you can develop with and to see your development quickly. So I'm going to show you what happens here. We also have to toggle open this Aovs, and within this tab we have this Denoiser area, and it'll allow you to select the Denoiser beauty. Okay, this is during our beauty pass. And it'll also allow you to utilize the Arnold Denoiser if you have the RTX. Now, if I go ahead and kick off a rendering, I'll pull up my render window here, and I'll go ahead and hit, go ahead and kick this off here. Let me open this up a little bit more. And pay attention to this time down here at the bottom. I'm going to go ahead and change this to our Denoiser. Okay, camera, shape. And let's see here. Let's find out what's happening. I see what's happening. So this is a good thing. We have to go back into our render settings, and under our Common tab, our Denoiser won't work with a JPEG output. It has to be a EXR output, and that's usually the default setting again here within our Common. So again, using the GPU to do our rendering, we have to render in our development stage as an EXR. However, let's take a look at this in our next video where we can spend a little bit more time on GPU rendering. See you then.